tables for everything. So they send them across the country to, like, kind of contacts with pilots, church groups, and then it gets sent from, well, I mean, all this stuff is organized, it's not secret or anything, but
back and forth.
But there was bird thing, was it through the calendar or some sort of, yeah, follow the birds. Sure.
yeah.
Not that long, but maybe I think they've done one.
It's kind of a fun activity. And it's still doing like software and stuff. This is the wonderful center.
Interesting.
Just the idea of rather than making it expand.
Number one's on it. Probably that's what he's doing now.
Sir, we are.
I thought it was trying to
Yeah, I have some in mind too, just in case.
I thought it just got confused.
Yeah.
It's because my battery on my computer, nothing's working over there, so my computer might be just running off its battery right now.
Okay.
And so I'll go look up in my office and I'll just carry it on.
Hey everyone, just a reminder, we're going to start quickly, but if you could turn off your cell phones. Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening of three of the standing committees. Community Planning Committee will be first, followed by Public Works and Protective Services, and then Environment and Natural Areas. And to begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, and particularly our near neighbors, the Chiana First Nation, and also the Sauk First Nation as well. And so with that, I will call to order the Community Planning meeting of May 8th, 2023. And committee, are there any additions to the agenda? Your little notes, the pinks that are here. And there are, I believe there are two pinks for the community planning meeting, and so I think we'll add those to correspondence, essentially. Yeah. So, okay. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? So Mayor Little, as amended. So Mayor Little and Councillor Donaldson, and all in favor, and that's carried. We have no presentations. We next move to public participation. And I do want to note that I think everyone in the room knows that there are public participation sessions for every meeting that will be hosted tonight. If you have comments about anything on the agenda, whether it's planning, public works, or environment and natural areas, please address it during public participation. And so again, if the item comes up after public participation, normally the public will not be allowed to speak or address it specifically. So with that, is there anyone for public participation for planning? Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Gary Smurford, and I live on Gilbert Drive. I'm wanting to speak about the stormwater retention pond covenant on the Metchosin Greenspace buffer that appears later in your agenda. And if I could draw your attention to the third page in that report. And I'm hoping, since I brought it forward about a month ago, that all of you have had a chance to actually look at the covenant. It's a nice legal document. In the report, there's paraphrasing from the covenant, and it states that the developer must not construct or build any building structure or infrastructure on any kind on Lot D until it delivers to the district a stormwater management plan prepared by a district-approved professional engineer showing the size, design, and location of the stormwater drainage works on our buffer lands. And such plan is approved by the district. And such works are constructed in accordance with the plan and to the district's satisfaction. So that's a lot of steps before they can do any work in Lot D. Lot D is their dominant lands, their subdivision. I was up there on the site this weekend, and there seems to be a lot of work going on, including storm drainage works, manhole barrels up there, things of that nature. The covenant states that approvals are to be in writing by the CAO. So I'd like to ask, has our CAO granted any approvals in writing on any of these things that they've asked for?
So, Gary, you got a direct question staff through me?
Through the chair to the CAO.
Yes.
Has there been any approval granted in writing by the CAO for, first of all, the professional engineer that's been retained by the District of Langford to design the stormwater management plan?
Okay,
No
so when
answer.
are you, I have a thought or two, but if you have a response, please.
I do have a response. The answer is no. No approval has been given.
Okay, so,
The one thing I will clarify, if I could, there are two sort of sets of steps in terms of when work can be done, put in place. And with that, once that is done, the developer was, given the okay to go ahead and do clearing. And I'm sorry, I'm looking for it here.
yeah, it's in the agreement, I agree.
Yeah.
It's two steps.
Yeah, and so the second one, and the more significant one, is the work after the stormwater management plan has been approved. So,
Yeah, and that's what I'm wondering, is if there have been any, first of all, the engineer that does the stormwater management plan has to be approved by the district in writing. So, myself, I've been accepted by the courts as an expert witness in stormwater management. Okay? So, it's not just a PN can walk in and do that. The second thing is, after you accept that person, then they prepare a plan that would include what happens in the dominant land, the subdivision up above, and then what they're going to do with their water, or portion of it, that goes down under the buffer lands. And it would appear that's just a portion of the water, but that would be our concern. So that plan would then be submitted here
yeah.
and reviewed by our consultant that we would retain for it. And then that approval would be given, according to the covenant, back to the developer. And then the third one is, then they would be able to proceed with building it, detailed design and building it on the land. And then after that's completed, then they can walk into the construction of infrastructure. So they're nearing that point when they're stockpiling material up on site for infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if any of those approvals have been granted, and they have been answered, none of them have been granted. And they have to be granted in writing by the CAO according to item 10A of the easement covenant. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary.
Councillor Shukin, if I
Mayor.
may, could you just clarify the answer from the CAO for the people that are at home that may not have heard that there was no approval?
Yeah, okay, oh, sorry. Thanks very much. To Mr. Smurfit's question about whether there has been approval of a stormwater management plan, that would have then allowed for the construction of roads, sewage, waterworks, and homes. Ultimately, the answer is no. So the one thing I can say is that I did speak with the engineer last week, and that we have received for review a stormwater management plan. So where that is in terms of approval, I can't say yet. However, I think staff are very aware that there's a plan in place to draft a policy that any major stormwater works does have to be reviewed by our advisory committees before it is approved. So that ideally will come before council next week for further consideration. So Mr. Smurfett.
I'm just going to be a pain in the ass.
Well,
Like,
here,
5 seconds, and then
Okay.
I'm going to walk out.
Okay.
The engineer that designs it
Okay.
for the developer has to be approved by the CAO in writing.
Mhm.
So we're not at the point of them doing any stormwater management plan at all. We're at the point of they submit someone who's,
Yeah.
they put forward as an expert in this field to design it. That was my point. It's the very first step. The others follow afterwards. Thank you.
It's a very good point. Thank you. And is there anyone else for public
Yeah.
participation?
Kimberly Hill. Citizen Hill, 1070 Brookview Drive. Similar to a previous speaker, I've been here before about this matter. Regarding the same clauses, detention clause, the covenant. In particular, this clause, the developer must not construct or build any building, structure, or infrastructure of any kind on Lot D until it delivers to the district stormwater management, etc., etc., etc. I have through the chair. I have a question for Sue. Why the heck have we not asked for a stop work order on this property? They have not delivered the stormwater management. We have not approved it. Is there a reason for this?
Well, here Ms. Hill, I'm going to answer that because again, the approval, there are certain approval powers that Metchosin has, but the main one is with the District of Langford. That is Langford's jurisdiction. My understanding is that they have received all of the approvals that they need. There's a specific bylaw for this for Centre Mountain. And what they did in terms of what the requirement that we have, they met that in terms of the clearing. So,
Pardon me, I just do disagree about that completely. I do not believe that they've met the minimum requirements. They have gone ahead and started construction before they have permission from Metchosin. We've been extremely generous with them. We've given the outrageous ability for them to use our land as an easement and for their selfish purposes. And it is my firm opinion, and it's well-based, especially after I've got this in tonight's agenda. This spells it out really clearly. We should have not allowed, we're getting bulldozed here. And it occurs to me that the reason that we're chosen the way it is the way it is because of brave people protecting our borders. And that's all I've got to say about this. I'm outraged, and I think that we need to get up on our hind legs and make sure that we've got control of what's happening. That critical place, headwaters of Bilston Creek, sacred land. That's all I have to say.
thanks, Kim. You know, I will just make one comment to your comments, Kim. Is this council is equally concerned? And the one thing I have to point out to everybody is the covenant was dated in 2017, and it was only in December that it was made publicly known. Perhaps it was out there if you read the documents closely, but it was not publicly known, broadly known until December of this year. And that was a decision that I made as the planning chair. That's where it came out, but I also had the support of the council as well. So we've also formed a working group to look at some of the issues with the buffer land and also with drainage as well. So we share that concern. So, and Kim, I remember I was with you at that first, one of the revival meeting in the Bilston Creek. So again, that comes from not wanting to let things pass and give a pass, comes out of concern as well. And I think that's shared at the table here. So
Granted, action further Let's go and assert ourselves.
Kim, if you're going to talk, you have to come to the microphone, okay?
I'll cease, thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, okay. Is there anyone else for public participation?
Hi, Michelle Morgan, 4495 Happy Valley Road, Mile Zero Brewing.
Michelle, if you're going to talk about Mile Zero Brewing, I might ask you to hold off, and I might
okay.
ask you to come up and just
Sure,
talk about it.
I didn't know when
Okay.
we were going to.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
I should have clarified that, but
No
yeah.
worries.
Sarah Anthony, Metchosin Road. Can I talk about Mile Zero? Okay, my turn to talk about it though. So I just wanted to speak in support of Mile Zero. I think it's quickly become a hub for this community. I can't say I've been as much as I'd like to, but I've had some lovely drinks with other Metchosinites, sometimes just a tea. Often I've seen friends or families with kids playing board games or couples sharing a growler and some breadsticks. I don't think this is some sort of drunken bacchanal, so I totally would support extending their hours so they can open specifically during the day on holidays, because I think that would be like really just a nice thing for, you know, it's, again, not late night things. We don't have a lot of those unless they're having private parties, so I think that that's fine. I don't think that's going to affect people negatively. I mean, let's face it, most people here are not late nighters. I mean, me and Eric consider ourselves young Metchosin, and we're like in bed by 8, so I don't think they could stay open late, but they're probably not going to have a whole lot of us here. So I think allowing them to do that is not going to have the negative effects that maybe people claim they will. I just don't think they would. And I just also wanted to mention about the vacation rental situation. I know it's not on the agenda, but I just missed it last time, I think. Personally, I'm not a fan of vacation rentals in terms of residential suites being used, because obviously we have a housing crisis, as I mentioned time and time again, and of course you're all aware of. But I do think, you know, they are there, and I understand why people do it. It makes money. I just think it would be a good idea if they're going to have it, that Metchosin made some money off of it too, right? That we either taxed it or had some sort of way that they had to get it checked out or get a license. It's a business. They should have a business license, right? So that's just my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Anyone else for public participation? Katie, please.
I just want to clarify, is this the time when I can talk about Mile Zero?
Yeah, please.
Katie Nelson, William Head, and I've been to the Mile Zero Club. They're very nice people. Their food is good. It's a lot of fun tasting their different beers. And I like the idea of them having longer hours in the daytime, but I'm totally not in favor of them staying open till 11 o'clock at night. I don't think there's much of a call for that by people that live in Metchosin, so that would be something that they would be doing to attract people outside of Metchosin. And I hope that they can stay in business but not stay open until 11 at night. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, please. And if you could say your name and what street you live on.
Sure. Hello, everybody. First time for me here. We've been living here with my partner 10 years and happily in Metchosin. You know, a bunch of people in farming community especially. I helped to establish the Wood Carouse mill across the road. And yeah,
Sorry, your name?
Sorry. Jaroslav Turecek.
Okay,
I'm living in Perry Cross Road. 4522. And yeah, I'm here to support also the lovely people, Michelle, Dirk, and Mike in their support, because I kind of know what does it mean to create something here, you know, like when we are in a short time and we start with the Wood Carouse. And it's the place where everybody can meet. I feel it's a big benefit for this community, you know, create more opportunity to meet people in the core there. And I feel they are not the bar, you know, they want to be a place where people can go together, spend time and hang out, and of course there's good product and have something to live, to eat. So I feel we should help them to run the business as much as they can, because like give them the flexibility to be open later or not. And they can adjust the hours in winter times or like extend in summer times they want, because like closing at 8 when this is summer and the light is still 10:30, it's kind of doesn't make so much sense. And yeah, basically that's it. I didn't plan it. I didn't really learn anything written, so I'm a really good speaker, but I feel that this is exactly what, and I represent a bunch of my friends and other people who are thinking that the extended hours is truly the problem, but then as we see it could be, and then they said, oh, I couldn't make it today, so I tried to make it and speak for them as well. So please, if you can, help them. And they had no bad records in 6 months. When I talked to owner of, for example, the Cumberland Brewing, he was, I don't know how many years there, and he was telling me like he is going around to communities like this and explaining people what does it mean, and he is not there to make people drunk. It's just a place where people can meet, and his business is working very well at their home with no bad records. So, and as was mentioning here, we are going to bed pretty early here, so stay longer in summer nice evenings in Metchosin would be really cool, I think, for everybody.
Great.
So, please.
Thanks, James.
Through the chair, can you give our deputy corporate officer the correct spelling of your name, please? She's at the back of the room. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
With a little. Anyone else for public participation?
Eric White, 4290 Metchosin Road. I'd like to start by apologizing to you all for my conduct at the last meeting. It was over the top, inappropriate, and my passion doesn't give me an excuse to make comments that are uncalled for. I just would like to speak in support of Mile Zero Brewing and their extended liquor service hours. I think it would be good if they could hold private functions later into the evening, giving Metchosin an opportunity to maybe rent out their facility and have a place close enough to home that people can walk, and saves us all the hassle of going anywhere else, then keeps us tight to our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. And anyone else? Lisa Key.
Lisa Gee, Kangaroo Road. I hadn't actually planned on speaking tonight, but I just wanted to throw in my support for the comments from Gary Smurfett and Ken Hill. Based on the prior history of the buffer lands, I would also like to maintain the pressure on the council that this is handled as correctly as possible. I know that some of it is closing the barn door after the horse is out, but to maintain that pressure that this is handled correctly, certainly based on their comments of getting approvals and so on. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Good evening. Tamara Ballard, Booton Road. I would like to show my support for Mile Zero for their extended hours. I think it would be nice to actually go there after council meetings and have a chance to debrief with our community. So I would just like to show my support for the extended hours. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamara. Anyone else for public participation? Going once, twice. Thank you very much, everybody. And we will talk about Mile Zero as we move along the agenda here. So, okay, so item 5A is the adoption of the Community Planning Committee meeting of April 17th. And any comments on that? Page 3 of the agenda. And if no comments, could I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
Motion to.
Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Epp, second. And any further comments? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? And thank you, that's adopted. Receipt of minutes. First one we have is the Parks and Trail Advisory Select Committee meeting of April 18th. And any comments? Councillor Craig?
Sure, well, I can move to receive the minutes, and I just have a comment to say that there's a lot of important stuff in the document here, but I just want to highlight the 3-hour field tour that Mark Atherton gave me, which was fabulous. We went around and visited, I think, touched on I think all the parks and most trails, and it was just a really interesting and inspiring tour around to see what we've got in Metchosin with someone who knows it firsthand. but also all the work that's been done by the committee over years, so much appreciate that.
Great. We have a motion from Councillor Gray to adopt, seconder, or receive. Councillor Donaldson. Any further discussion? Councillor Donaldson.
Can you give us an update of what happened with the unauthorized tree cutting in Blaney area there?
Well, what I'm to understand is there was tree cutting near the trail. This was detected. It was really there was a bylaw officer that went out to investigate. He could find no signs that would lead to a culprit. So, and to be honest with you, Councillor Donaldson, I'm not exactly sure where this took place. Thank you, Mayor Little, any further information?
Yeah, I went down after we got the report, so it was at the bottom of the trail when you're looking at the lookout to the right in front of the memorial bench. So there was some clear evidence of recent cutting of some of the trees that were coming up. And you're right, there was no evidence of who may have done that. And I don't know whether that case has been closed or that ticket's been closed or what.
And I did hear, by way of Mark Atherton, the chair of PTAS, that he was contacted by CRD Bylaw, and they seem to have done a fairly thorough investigation, such as they could. So we'll keep an eye on it, and yeah.
So is the file still open?
I doubt it, but I don't know for sure. Susan, Ms. Darnowski, you know, okay.
I'm not able to confirm if it's still open or not.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to receive these minutes. Thank you. And all carried. The Bufferland Working Group meeting of April 20th. And so we met as a group that night, first time for a few people meeting each other. We didn't really talk too much in terms of the Bufferland itself, but we covered off some work process things, and we provided some, Councillor Donaldson and I provided some background. We did discuss the possibility of doing a site tour, which was done and led by Councillor Donaldson on Saturday. And so that's been done. What we talked about at that meeting was moving swiftly to begin our work. And so step one of that was to do the public information meeting. And that will be held tomorrow at 7 p.m. in this chamber here. And please come out if you can, and Councillor welcome as well. And so the focus of that meeting tomorrow will be, we'll do ideally no more than a 30-minute presentation covering some background information, giving the community some things to think about, and then we'll open it up to discussion after that. So, yeah. Councillor Donaldson, anything further to add on the...
No, I just encourage the public to come out. There's been a lot of people that have been interested, so I'm expecting a lot of people here.
Great.
I'd be disappointed if there wasn't.
For sure.
Hopefully
So,
for our first engagement, absolutely.
yeah. And so again, the mandate of the committee is, well, there's a few elements, but it's to report back to council within 6 months of forming, so we're underway now, and to hold 2 information meetings. This is the first, and the second one will be to report on what we've come to. So we're off and underway. And so with that, can I have a motion to receive the minutes from April 20th? So moved by Mayor Little and Councillor Donaldson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so we move to the fun part of the agenda now. So reports. So on page 15 of your agenda, you will find a staff report with a request for a development permit. And so this is for 366 Park Drive, and effectively the structural focus of the development permit is a single-story garage of 75 square meters or 800 square feet. And this is coming to the committee for a few reasons. So Park Drive is located within the Shoreland Slopes Development Permit area. And so when you're in a DPA, there are certain requirements that you may have to meet. And so with this particular DPA, all new developments require an engineer's report. Removal of vegetation is to be minimized. House construction, regrading, excavation is not permitted within 60 meters of the shoreline And then you need to look at issues like setbacks from the shoreline, slope stability, runoff, and compliance with drainage provisions. One of those is that the effective impervious area cannot exceed 10%. And then, minimizing the removal of vegetation. Okay, so in this case, the garage is going to be within 60 meters of the shoreline. And there is an engineer's report that says that this can be done without any negative impact on the environment and the shoreline itself. But what I've noticed as I read sort of in between the lines is that without some change, there is going to be a reduction in impervious surface, and there's the potential of the effective impervious area moving to over 10%. So what's happening is the applicant is proposing to convert 132 square meters of asphalt driving, convert that to gravel. And then there'll be other steps taken to improve drainage as well. So I have some thoughts, and I mentioned one thing we tried to do with this is to arrange a site visit. One of the options we have is to maybe do the site visit and then come back to the planning committee for further discussion. But with that committee, I leave it up to any comments you may have. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, so there's a lot of information here. I was specifically interested in what they were looking at for stormwater management, because we're also dealing with that with buffer land, but this is a much smaller scale, also a very sensitive area with the basin there, the lagoon. They have also talked about diverting the water into where there's vegetation, a rainwater garden. I think these are all really good attributes to the land. I certainly would support a site visit. Specifically, I'm interested in the 4 trees. I realize they're not huge, but trees are important with our environment, with water and carbon sequestration. These trees are anywhere from 7 to 15 inches in diameter. So I'd like to see what the location is and have a better look at that. I remember campaigning through that area. I have a pretty good sense of the lay of the land, but until you see it, you don't. Each one's a little bit different, so I would appreciate that opportunity. I also like the idea that they're willing to put in gravel instead of more hardscaping, because they are going to be putting in a roof for that garage. So it's a good compromise.
Great. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'll just agree with those points of Councillor Donaldson, and I agree with your proposal that we do a site visit and follow up in planning committee.
Great. Mary.
Yeah, I'd like to move option number 2 for discussion, table the application pending more information from staff on the applicant, including a site visit, and to come back to the planning committee. So that's a motion.
Great. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Donaldson. And discussion.
Yeah, can I speak to that? The site visit would be really important, as you mentioned, for us to do our due diligence, especially because this is within the shoreland slope development permit area. So it's really hard to imagine the realignment of the driveway, the depression area, the grassed area, as well as the impervious area requirement and the runoff area. And also I have some specific questions regarding the rain garden, maybe for the engineer or for our planner, as well as sort of some of the definitions regarding, for instance, the runoff coefficient of greater than 0.8. That doesn't really mean a lot to me, so I just need a little bit of guidance in order to clearly understand the application and to give an informed decision. So those are some of my comments. I did note that, as you did in the Riser report on page 18 of 49, that the engineer Neil Clausen did say there was no adverse impacts on the sloped area. So that was good, and that was noted in the carefully outlined report of the planner. So of course I'd like to thank the planner for her report, but I just have a little bit more questions and possible answers that'll help me in any ways come to a conclusion.
Great. It's one one quick response. Whenever I encounter things like drainage coefficient 0.8 or whatever, it's like, what does that number mean? So I went and had a look, and I think they top out, the coefficient tops out at 1. The higher the number toward 1 means the more impervious. So something like a farm field might be 0.01 or 1 or 0.01. Yeah. But once you get up to 0.8, that is a hard state. That doesn't drain well. So yeah, but excellent comments.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table, and we've seconded it. Councillor Gray, or Councillor Rapp, sorry.
Answered anything.
Yeah, I think that they've ticked most of the boxes. I think we need. I'm always happy to have a site visit just to see what's going on there. But I do respect the decision of the geotechnical engineer as far as it seems like he's pretty happy with the plan. So.
Okay, great, thank you. Any further comments? And hearing no comments, again, the motion before us is to table the application pending more information from staff or the applicant, and also request that staff provide a site visit or arrange a site visit for council. So any further comments before we...
And then to come back to the planning committee.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and I think we've got, I'm betting Tina, Ms. Hanson has that, so I will call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, so we next come to the staff report on Mile Zero Brewing. And I'm just going to make an opening comment or two, and then if I could, I was going to invite Michelle and Dirk to come to the mic and explain their application before turning things over to the committee for their comments. So really the one thing I just want to clarify before going to Dirk and Michelle is the question before us tonight is whether we provide comment on the application, and sorry, not tonight, but open ourselves to providing comment on the application, which would thus trigger our involvement in a broader consultation process. Or we opt out of comment, which I take to mean that we will then officially not be able to provide comment into the process, and that is turned over to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Board. Or we could outright reject the application. So whatever we feel about the request of adding the hours, the question before us is along those lines right here, unless we decide as a council that we want to reject the application totally. So provide ourselves as a vehicle for comment, turn it over to Liquor and Cannabis, or reject the application. So now if I could ask Michelle and Dirk to come up, and if you could explain what it is you've applied for and how you see that fitting in with your operation at present.
Sure.
And if I could, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to go through your comments.
Okay, I will do my best. Hi, I'm Michelle from Mile Zero Brewing. You're probably going to have to remind me of the questions because I'm not that good. But basically what we want to do is be able to extend our service hours so that we can look at being open earlier, for example, like on holidays. Right now, Liquor and Cannabis, with our liquor service hours that we have now, if a stat, for example, if a stat holiday falls on a Monday or a Friday, we can't open up before 2 p.m. So, for example, most places on stat holidays have Sunday hours or things like that. So where they're opening up at 11, we wouldn't be able to do that until 2. So that's kind of the reason why we're asking for the extension of the hours, partially for that. And I'm just gonna pull up my notes here again, pardon me. They just went black. So stat holidays is one. Special events is another. So if we want to rent out the space, we would then have limited time where we're able to rent out the space too, unless we get special permitting, things like that. So if we have a private event and they want an extended hour, for example, for instead of 8 to 9 on a Friday or on a Thursday, we would have to get 2 special permits and a couple other things, and it would take like 6 to 8 weeks for us to be able to accommodate that. So if somebody comes up to us with a party or something like within a week or two, we'd have to decline that right away, which has occurred. And then the other thing, sorry, my phone keeps going on, and then seasonal variations. So for example, we're with our picnic area and whatnot, it's in the fall and winter, things get dark at 4 or 5 o'clock at night, which is fine. In the summer, we want to be able to have the extended hours where people are more active and things like that till about 9:30 or 10. But the first thing that we have to do is look at our the liquor service hours before we can even look at the extension of our operating hours. So I just want to clarify that, because I think there's a confusion of our service liquor hours to our operating hours. So right now what we're asking is the service liquor hours be extended, not necessarily our operating hours. Operating hours right now, we don't have any intention at this time to extend. So it's more, we're just trying to look at the stats, things like that we can extend hours and begin either before or a little bit after. And then the other thing too is with our service liquor hours, the way they are now, we have lots of families and games that happen. Families come in after supper, so 6:30, 7 o'clock. We have to close by 8. That's not enough time necessarily for a full game to be played. So we have a half-hour extension with the service liquor license to everything has to be done by 8:30. So we have to have everybody out the door and our doors locked at 8:30. So with this extension, we aren't necessarily going to be serving anyone, but they have that extra like 10 minutes or 20-minute leeway where they can finish up a game, enjoy the rest of their conversation, and then proceed to leave. Did I make the time? Did I answer the question?
Absolutely.
Did I answer your
good.
question? Okay.
Yep. I'm going to ask the committee if they have anything for Michelle and Dirk. Questions or clarifications? I guess while you're thinking, I have one clarification. So you're seeking an extension of your hours from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Our
Your liquor service hours.
Our liquor service hours,
Okay.
which are different than our operating
Okay,
hours.
so that was my clarification.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Right.
operating hours. So even right now, we have our liquor service hours during the week start at 2 p.m. Where Monday through Thursday we don't open until 4:30. So that's the difference. We have a little bit more opportunity there, but we're setting up our hours as to what we feel is appropriate for our operating hours. So that's the other thing. If nobody comes, we're not going to open. And if nobody stays late, we're not going to stay late, right? So we're just trying to be service and community minded here as well. So
Great. Okay. If there are no, Councillor Donaldson.
So that I'm clear, I know you want to stay open later, do you want to open earlier?
well, that's just it with stats right now. The way it is that we wouldn't be able to open until 2 p.m. So we would like to be able to open earlier, like on stats. So that's why we're asking for just a blanket instead of having. Right now, everybody's really confused also with our hours of operation because there's variances every day, like Monday through Thursday, and then Friday is a different hours, and then Saturday is different hours. So if we can try to streamline that, as well as just to be able to say these are the hours that we have, as well as if we can get the extension previous to, we may be able to extend our hours and open earlier, not just on stats, but on regular days as well. And then we might be able to support the Metchosin community by being able to hire someone else who is from the local community as well. So.
Okay, so something like every day from 2 till 9 or something like that.
Well, yeah, but with stats, right? Like that's the other thing is liquor doesn't consider stats. Like it just considers a day, right? So if it falls on a Monday, and you say you want us to be open at 2 for our liquor hours, we can't open earlier than that, right? So that's why we're just asking.
Okay. So for stats and special events, seasonal variations, I do understand that.
Okay.
The reason I'm asking about the 2 o'clock start, say during the week, the business week, when schools and other operations, is this one of the things that came up in the very beginning was there's a preschool around the corner, and preschool ends at 1 o'clock, Monday to Friday when it's in operation. So obviously they're not in operation on weekends or stats. So that was where my question was coming from. So that was a concern in the community at one point in time. I'm just saying as a statement, not one way or the other.
Your parents love us.
They come in with their kids all the time.
I understand that, but there is a concern in the community with alcohol and driving and kids, and it's busy. It's busy, and the court's getting busier because it's a popular place to come to. And I have been in your establishment with with families there, which is great to see, especially with the games and stuff. I think that's quite charming.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful, and we've been super well received, and I can't speak highly of everybody supporting us. It's been wonderful. So, and I think that's part of why we're here, is because we wouldn't be here if we didn't feel that we had community support to be wanting us to have a little bit longer in the evening or earlier during stat holidays and other seasonal events.
So I see Councillor has her finger on her mic. Go ahead, Councillor.
I have my notes. Yeah, I don't have a question, but I do have some comments. Council spent considerable time developing a strategic plan, and the first topic under the social pillar states encourage a vibrant village center and corridor. Mile Zero is a tiny nano brewery selling homemade craft beer, non-alcoholic beverages, and food choices. Doesn't have blare loud music, has art on the walls, not big TVs broadcasting the game of the hour. And it seems to me that Mile Zero has kind of been singled out at times for criticism, while other much larger establishments in Metchosin have far greater latitude in their ability to operate. Metchosin Cafe for one, the Metchosin Golf Club for another, and the community hall regularly has events where the bar is open later. Excuse me. While Mile Zero serves beer, all the others can offer hard liquor, mixed drinks, and wine, which all have a much greater alcohol content. When I've stopped by Mile Zero, what I've seen is a couple of guys having a beer and sausage roll after work, a few couples dropping by for an evening, people playing a board game, families with kids, toys, and pizza. So since it's open, Mile Zero has been a low-key establishment, the owners keeping true to their commitment of creating a community gathering space. Right now the brewery doesn't open all the hours it possibly can, and there's no intention to open daily, every day from 11 to 11. It only gives them an option to occasionally open earlier or later, such as stat holidays, as you've said. I believe council should not spend the money for advertising, correspondence, and staff time, and leave the community engagement to the liquor board. And I would like to move option 2, which is to opt out of the public input process. There's no comment from the local government, and therefore the LCRB will be responsible to gather public input.
Okay, so you guys can probably say.
I want us to say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
If you have any questions, ask
have
me.
any further,
for sure.
bring us
Okay.
back up. But thank you so much
Thanks
for your
so
time
much.
tonight.
Okay, so bold and decisive motion from Councillor Epp. Do we have a second? I will second for discussion. I like Councillor Epp. I'm struggling. Well, the one option I think we should not pursue is reject the application. I don't see that there's any merit to do that. It may not succeed at the end of the day, but at least it should be heard. I think Mile Zero has been a great addition to the community to date. I don't think there's been trouble there. I just don't see any merit to rejecting the application. The question is, what do we do with providing comment on the application, whether it's, or do we opt out? So I have to say I'm struggling a little bit with this. The one thing I do reflect on is the council of the past spent a lot of time, there's a lot of effort and a lot of community comments on this. And then there were 2 consultation processes that happened. One on behalf of the council, then apparently that wasn't done right, so the liquor and cannabis had to do it again. So, I don't know, I'm anxious to hear what the rest of the committee thinks about this. And I just will say that we do have a motion on the floor now to opt out of comment, option 2. Councillor Craig, thank you.
I'll move to it. So thanks. Well, I'd like to hear some other people's comments before I say whether I'd support the motion or not. People will know that I was involved in the earlier consultation from the public perspective, being within the radius of concerned citizens. And you're correct, Councillor Schutten, there's been 2 public consultations already done. And the council forwarded to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Board its recommendation in terms of hours. Turned out, as you say, I guess they found the district's efforts lacking, but they in fact endorsed the hours that were put forward. So when they heard from the community, whatever they heard, they accepted the hours that the council had put forward. And they were, as Councillor Donlan said, restricted in the morning because of the preschool, and restricted in the evening. The argument was put forward, and I believe accepted by council, that the community should close down at a certain time. To only have a liquor establishment being the only thing that's open at nighttime might not be in the best interest of the community. The concerns that were expressed by people who wrote in were noise, lights, increase in traffic, parking, drunk driving, odors, air quality, safety, village center, rural ambiance, not beyond rural ambiance. They were looking for a rural ambiance. The lack of sidewalks, no police supervision, concern of disturbances, and people speaking for a smaller venue. I agree with what people have said, that we've seen pretty nice behavior around the location. But I think the bigger issue is the long and winding road at night in the rain in the wintertime to Royal Bay and Langford, where many people presumably will come from, because I'm not sure we have the population to support the bar being open the hours that we're talking about, or that are being proposed today. Maybe the more important thing, though, would be that we haven't yet, we have a management operations plan pending in our strategic plan about the old school, what do we want to have happen there. And I think it's legitimate that we should consider what happens in this particular location as well. What do we mean by the vibrant center, for example? And so I'd like us to have that discussion, sort that out, and then underneath that would come the topic of the brewery itself. The other thing to note is that we don't have an alcohol policy in place on district-owned properties. And so while mention is made of other places in the community that are open later, none of them are owned by the district. So it's us who carry a significant share of the liability in the circumstance of an actual problem. And so we're talking about the owners of the facility, but we're also talking about the liability and the concerns that we would carry. The LCRB advises local governments' failure to demonstrate due diligence in mitigating risks can result in heavy financial damages. It just takes one injury on the road, of course, to, back to this place that would hammer us pretty hard. Not so much a fatal accident, but one where somebody survives and is disabled as a result. So we can, of course, proceed, and if a public consultation was successful, the hours would be set by the liquor board, and then there's no turning that back. So that's for good, for as long as the location is there. It's a little bit different than what the previous council said was, well, we'll take these hours and we'll go with them. And then the opportunity was to expand them at some future point if it seemed like a good idea. If you expand them to the maximum allowable, which is what we're talking about here, the liquor service hours, not the operating hours, then what you're doing is just saying forever forward now, as long as the Mile Zero exists there under this licensing regime, they can be open from 11 morning to 11 night if they so choose at any day of the week. Previous council suggested start holidays from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. I think what the proprietors have explained is that that was the one question that the liquor board didn't decide on. Instead, they say day of the week would be determinative. So the liquor board said that's reasonable. We've got the feedback from the community, 2 public consultations. They have the results of all of that. They accepted these hours and said that works for us on the liquor control board side. And for me, I'd be interested in a better argument for the community, why we would go later. As I say, I was up there again last night, tried it a few nights this week, see it at 9:30, what's going on? Of course, nothing. It's a very quiet place. There's nothing happening there at nighttime.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Mayor Little, Councillor Donaldson, Mayor Little, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks to the planner for the report. I appreciate the report to the intern CAO. So yeah, I'm sort of mixed feelings regarding this. I was on the previous council and we went through a lot of letters back and forth. There was a lot of letters, I would think, if I'm recalling correctly, there were more letters against in terms of the longer hours than for. That's my recollection. Moving forward to this term, I think we do need a policy on liquor and cannabis licensing applications, as Councillor Gray has indicated. I think that's one thing that we need to move on. I'm remembering also our conversations with Superintendent Todd Preston, and he said when he was talking to us that one of the major concerns is drunk driving and driving without a license and drunk driving, and I'm really concerned about that. I would have preferred to review this application in a year's time. So this is only 6 months, and I agree we've received no complaints that I'm aware of. I've stopped by there not to partake, but just to see what's going on. There's always staff there. They're very pleasant. People seem to be having a great time, and I have no problems with that. I would just prefer to have a year of what's happening in a year and then reassess. At this point, I'm not trending towards granting the extended hours because I'm really worried about the unintended consequences of that. I don't have a crystal ball to understand what those could be, but I could surmise what they could be, and I'm not feeling as comfortable in moving forward at this time. Doesn't mean in the future I may not be able to consider that, but at the current time, given what's been said at the table already, as well as my own reservations, and also what we've heard from Superintendent Todd Preston, gives me pause for thought.
Great. Thanks, Ray. Councillor.
Yeah, I think those are good points. Certainly a year is a good grace period. It's getting the core is getting more popular. We've got a lot of interest in activities at the school. We've got a pending car show that might be happening this summer. There's some pop-up markets. There's interest to rent out the gymnasium, which is all great for a small business like this, brings more people. And then the outdoor patio will be open. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the business grows in that regard. So I think a year's grace certainly is a good idea. I know that our community definitely would chime in if they had the opportunity. We've already had a couple of letters come in just even in the last couple of days on this. Yeah, so I would support going for a year and evaluating how this transpires for this business and support that process.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gray?
Well, hearing those interventions, I'll vote against the motion on the table. And I suggest coming back in a year makes good sense. And I too want to recognize, we heard from Katie Nelson in the audience tonight, but also Bev Bacon and Kathy Atherton with similar type of concerns. Yeah, give us some time to look to see how things are going and then pick it up from there.
Great. Councillor Abt, do you want to say one more?
Well, I think it's pretty clear where I stand on it. I think it's. I think we've heard that the main reason is so that they could open probably during the lunch hour during a stat holiday, and be open, say in the spring when it's still light until 10 o'clock. I really don't think the arguments about drinking and driving and so on really pertain to such a tiny place where there really isn't a lot of drinking going on, but a lot more socializing. People can certainly go across the street to the cafe and start drinking in the morning. So I think and it's only across the street from where that preschool distance would be. So I think it's unfortunate not to give them a chance to support the business.
Thanks, and I am going to vote in support of the motion. Whether it's defeated or not, I will support it. The one thing I have to say though is I'm mindful of the limitations that Mile Zero has on it right now. So whether it's parking, whether it's the room that they have to have patrons in, and there's even limits on the amount of alcohol that they can serve. I don't fully understand that, but I think you're not allowed, Dirk, if I can ask you a clarification on that. Is that correct?
Well, we're all trained in serving
through the chair, could you ask him to come to the mic,
sure.
please,
Sorry.
just for the recorder? Thank you.
Hi, Dirk Slot, 3811 Cedar Hill Road. Yeah, we're all trained with serving it right.
Okay.
So we have to monitor our customers and not overserve them.
Okay.
So that is like our limit.
Okay. Gotcha.
We can serve. So we're trained in like volumes, time.
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood, but thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. That said, again, I there are some limitations in terms of the number of patrons that they can have, and just the vibe that they created. It doesn't strike me that it's right for. Again, as someone mentioned, TVs and leather jackets and whatever else that you might find in a bar of bad repute. So, not that I ever go to those stuff. So, if there are no further comments, I will call the question. So, the motion is to support the opt-out for comment motion. So, all in favor? And opposed? Okay, that motion is defeated. Now we still have unfinished. We still have to finish the business here. If we reject the application, yeah. Okay. So because there is an application, I think that it's incumbent upon us. I'm wondering if there's actually a do nothing option as well. I will leave it to maybe others if you want to make a motion to outright reject. But I wonder if there is actually a do nothing option. And Mr. Aronofsky, any thoughts on that?
So option 2 would be equivalent to do nothing. You are not commenting.
Okay.
And we're not also gathering public feedback.
Okay, great. Okay. Hearing nothing else, Sir? Go ahead, Mayor Little.
Through the chair, can I just get clarification from the interim CAO? Mr. Noski, could you come to the mic and explain that to me? So what I'm confused about is, has the application gone to the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board and they're waiting for us to comment?
Yes, it has. So the application itself goes to the Liquor Control Board. So this is just for us for a chance for referral. Yeah, so we're not the ones that are deciding whether or not to extend the hours. It's with the Liquor Control Board.
Right. So by us not commenting, does that imply we're fine with?
No, it just means they will take on the process of gathering feedback. As was my understanding, that was the route that was done the first time the license was approved.
And secondarily, do we have assurance that they will do a public consultation process, or is it up to them to decide whether they need to do a public consultation process? You see where I'm going with
yes,
this?
I see that Councillor Gray has the same one.
Go ahead.
I just say, yeah, it is on them because it is the application. So they are responsible for gathering public feedback, but there's also an option for us as a referral agency to do that as well. So they will do the, if we defer that responsibility to the Liquor Control Board, they will do the public feedback.
Right, and my final question is, so we can't give comment without taking on the public consultation process ourselves? Or can we say to the Liquor Control Board, yes, please go ahead and do the public consultation, and then send our own letter?
I'll have to seek confirmation of that. I'm not clear. I guess Councillor Gray has information.
Councillor Gray, go ahead.
I think what's going on here is that the opportunity, option one, is that we're involved and we do the job of the consultation to a certain standard. Then option two, and then we provide that information to the Liquor Control Board. They take it, they review it, and they count up the letters in, the letters out, that kind of thing, or the number of attendees at a meeting or whatever it might be. Option two is we're not taking a position on this. Liquor Control Board, you please do it. You're quite skilled at it. You've done it before. You know how to do it. It'll be done according to law. Take care of it. Option three is we say we reject the application, and that just stops it now. No cost to anybody, and or I don't think there's an application cost. There might have been, but it's put to the side until the next time an application is made.
And yeah, I support what Councillor Gray is saying in terms of those options. So we have voted, and if voted on option two, and it failed. And if we want to take, it doesn't sound like we want to entertain option one, there is the ability to go with option three, which is reject the application.
So if I may add to that, is prior to this package being compiled, our planner was not able to get confirmation from the Liquor Board if council chooses option three, which is to reject the application, if that's the final outcome, or if the Liquor Board still has privy authority to just go ahead and grant the license. So that part, I cannot say definitively. If council chooses option three, if that actually stops the application process with the Liquor Control Board. So I'll have to get a planner to continue to communicate with the Liquor Control Board on that.
So the one thing I have to clarify though, if I look at planner's report, it talks about if council chooses to proceed with this options and reject the application, then a letter of resolution will need to be provided. So
right.
Yeah, so it fits in with what you're saying as well though. So committee, what is your wish? Councillor Gray.
I'll make a motion to reject the application.
Do we have a seconder?
And I'll speak to it if someone seconds it.
Can I get a point of clarification first? Do you mind? Right in the middle of a motion. So we don't have the information from the planner regarding clarification on option number three, reject the
option number 3, that's correct.
So we don't have that information. I just don't feel comfortable voting on it one way or another without complete information. And so I'm not saying I'm going one way or the other on rejecting the application. I'm just saying I don't have enough information to make that informed decision, especially since it's a question of the interim CAO and of the planner. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you. So point of clarification has been addressed, I think. So we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Grant.
No, actually, it's not on the floor. It's not seconded yet.
Yeah, the motion wasn't seconded.
Yeah, we have. So Councillor Gray's made a motion. So go ahead, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I could make a different motion that perhaps would be better. Just to table this to the next meeting where we have clarification from the planner on the issue of whether rejecting the application puts it aside for until a new application is made.
Yeah.
Say, for example, a year from now.
I'll second that.
Okay, so sorry. What just Councillor Gray? I think you want to
table,
postpone decision. Yeah. And then, okay.
Postpone the decision until the next meeting when we have clarification from the planner on option 3.
Thank you. And seconder to that motion, Councillor Donaldson. And any further discussion? I'll support that motion. So, Mayor Little.
I just wanted to know, does the committee want any clarification on any other point? Maybe open that up to the committee just so for a second thought. The reason why I wasn't, I was going back and forth on the public consultation is it's going to cost us money if we do it. It's going to cost us money, it's going to cost us staff, so I'm cognizant of that. Although sometimes it's important to pay money, but if we don't have to, then I would rather someone else do that process, but I'd like it to be done if the application is going to be heard. But it would be nice to have that information.
Councillor Gray, thank you.
Well, I don't think it needs to be in the form of a motion, but it would be nice to get clarity on the special event permits. My understanding is a special event permit allows, if it's applied for and accepted, it would need to be reviewed by the district because it's on district property. But the license for a special event would be from 9 in the morning till 2 a.m. the following day. And I'd like to know whether or not in approving an application whether the district can limit the hours of a special event permit. And I'm asking that because this is different. This is now a licensed facility as compared to a manufacturer's license, which was a slightly different set of rules, which I'm more familiar with in the application process.
There are complexities within this. I guess.
Yeah,
makes my head kind of spin a little bit. But thank you, Councillor Gray. Mayor Little.
Yeah, and I wanted more clarification on what we also allow in the district. I understand that the Metchosin Cafe and the community hall are not municipal buildings. However, I would like to know what the standards are for other businesses within the community within 150 meters of Mile Zero as well.
So if I could just get a point of clarification to the 150 meters, it was mentioned in the report that that's an arbitrary number that was chosen by staff because that does capture some residences in the area. So we do not have a policy. If the committee wishes, we could extend that to 200 meters, 300 meters, whatever number that committee sees fit.
Yeah. The liquor board does 500 meters.
Yeah.
So one point of clarification, Mayor Little, I think you wanted background into what the other liquor serving establishments in Metchosin, what their hours are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are they allowed to serve liquor until 2 a.m., for instance, on special events? I can't remember, honestly. I know that I just can't remember.
Yeah, but their liquor service, there's a few things there. So go ahead.
Yeah, and things are controlled as the applicants have suggested. There's the liquor service hours, then there's what's the choice made by the facility. So for example, the golf course has a certain hours they're open, which are different than the hours of another place, and especially event permits are a different thing again. But they're also controlled by the owner of the buildings. They decide the length of time they're open. In this instance, I'm just raising the issue of, what time do we want to close of our buildings that we own.
Great. Ms. Tarnowski, thank you very much. And, okay, so are there any further comments on the motion? And hearing none, I will call the question, which is basically to table this motion to get more information. And all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay. So we next move to the most... Yeah. The councillors update. Just go through this very quickly. So on April 29th, I attended the line of duty death service for Assistant Chief Lance Caven, who was Assistant Chief with the Langford Fire Rescue. It was a very well done event, and there were hundreds of people there. Had a chance to sit with my Langford colleagues, and yeah, it was a very moving event. Metchosin Community Day is in planning right now. It is set for Sunday, September 10th. And as I think we've heard a few times now, the focus will be on kids and families, and it will be a scaled down event. No beer garden kind of being the biggest change, but there will be a dinner as well. I mentioned the Bufferland Working Group that met, and there was a meeting tomorrow, which I also mentioned as well. The Metchosin Grounds Group met last Thursday, and general updates were provided. One of the interesting ones is we've talked about the cricket pitch and cricket screens that were on order. They're apparently coming, so good news for the cricket community. And we also talked about volunteer recruitment as well. So there were some ideas that were shared, including the potential of having some type of volunteer recruitment event. And so the fire chief and myself, given her enthusiasm for the idea, were tasked with putting that together. So we'll have further conversations about that. And the Beckingham Road amenities zoning application, there was a site visit held for council on April 22nd. And for the busy event schedule this week, they're holding an information meeting on Wednesday at the community hall from 6:30 until 8:30 p.m. So that's on Wednesday. Okay. And hearing no comments. So stormwater detention pond covenant. So let's talk about this again. So we again, this was made more public, or essentially public. It had been known sort of in, if you chose to read closely some of the documents that have been circulating way back in 2017, 2018, you would see it there, but it took some work. It was really only made known in December of this year. So I hope everyone's been able to pick up the report from the website. There's a lot of information here, and I benefited from input from Ms. Tarnowski and also District Legal Counsel. And I'm just going to go through some of the top line questions. The first one is a very basic one. Is the covenant and easement valid? And the answer is yes. It is on title, it is signed duly, it is there when you go look into the information. So this was a lingering question, and again, I think the reason why it was lingering, because it was a surprise to folks. But it is valid, and it is binding on the owners of Lot D and the owners of what was then known as Lot A, but now the bufferland. So again, the key thing is it runs with the title. So if Lot D was to be sold, Lot A, the bufferland, was to be sold, those obligations go with the ownership of that property. Okay, question 2. What obligations does the district have under the easement and covenant? And this is boiled down to 2 things, so I'll read them to you. So the district must permit and not obstruct access to the bufferland by the developer for the purposes contained in the agreement. So that's a summary of the obligations that we have. And the second, the district must not interfere with, endanger, or obstruct the infrastructure, the stormwater infrastructure, or the works as it's known in the covenant. Okay, 2 simple points kind of boiled down there. The next thing is a little bit more detailed, ironically. What are the developers, otherwise known as the grantee's obligations under the easement and covenant? And what follows are upwards of 11 points. And I'll just go through them very quickly here. So the developer must obtain the district's consent to the size, design, location of the stormwater detention works prior to construction, installation, or extension. The developer must construct and install the works in accordance with the district bylaws and regulations. Must carry out work in a workmanlike manner. Must take steps to prevent soil slippage. Must repair damage to the buffer land caused by the construction. Must repair the works on notice from the district. And must obligate any transferee of Lot D to assume its obligations under the agreement. Yeah, and then we've talked about some of these other things. Must not commence construction on Lot D. Must not build any, sorry, that was until the monitoring station was installed. Then can't construct any building structure or infrastructure until the stormwater management plan is approved. And finally, the developer must indemnify the district for loss arising from the agreement or from the developer's acts or omissions in respect of the agreement. So if the terms of this are followed, and I mean, in some ways the onus is on us to make sure they are, it is a powerful, it is a powerful set of obligations. And what's interesting here is there's possibly an opportunity, because one way or the other, the stormwater from that development was going to find its way into Billston Creek. So we now have the opportunity to influence how that might look. So our job at council is to make sure that that happens in the best way forward. So, okay. So question 4, what rights does the district have within the easement and covenant? And there is a lot here, but I'm going to just, I'll just hit the 4 bullets. So the district may maintain the works in a proper state if the developer fails to do so and then charge the developer. The district may draw down the stormwater monitoring station security to cover costs of repair and maintenance of those works for a 1-year period. The right of indemnity from the developer for loss arising from the agreement or from the developer's acts or permissions, so we've covered that already. And again, the developer may enforce the covenants in section 5 and 6 by way of injunction with legal costs payable by the developer. So there's a fair bit of clout there. The district, thank you.
Councillor Shi, can I just ask, on the previous page, you mentioned the developer must construct and install the works in accordance with the district's bylaws and regulations. Now, I imagine we're still looking at that, but have you got a sense yet? Have we got anything that we can turn to in our own bylaws at the moment? I'm not sure we know, but just you discovered yet?
I don't just yet. No, I think much is going to be known once we look at the stormwater management plan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a great question, and we actually have a bit of an answer here. So, who will be responsible for the maintenance and performance of the stormwater ponds once individual lots in Lot D are sold? And then the second part of that question is what liability could we be exposed to? Now, part of the answer is a bit speculative, but I have some reason to think it is going to hold true. So, Section 223, subsection 1 of the Land Titles Act confirms that on the deposit of a plan of subdivision of a dominant tenement, so that means Central Mountain Estates in this case, the benefit of the easement applies to each of the new parcels. So that obligation found in D will apply to the actual individual owners. So here's, this is from our legal counsel. So it is likely that Langford's approving officer has required the developer to execute a servicing agreement for the stormwater works as a condition of approval of the subdivision of Lot D to ensure adequate drainage installations of the development. Okay, the specific terms of the servicing agreements can vary, but usually the developer funds the construction of the municipally required works and their maintenance for a limited time before transferring ownership and maintenance of the works over to the municipality. So there is some more work we have to do on this, but the obvious thing is the developer builds and then turns it over to Langford. So again, I feel like in this process, from the time we heard about the sale in October of 2021, there have been umpteen surprises. Sorry, not umpteen. There have been a number of surprises that have come up. And I think this is one we need to double down on and make sure that it is going to be solid. So, in terms of Langford assuming responsibility for the stormwater works. So, okay, and finally, 2 more questions. Is Metchosin conveying its concerns regarding the easement and covenant to the developers in Langfords? And so, and the answer is yes. We've had phone calls. I spoke to somebody connected with the development on Thursday to talk about this, and we will be further in touch with Langford and the developers as well. And there is a letter and correspondence we owe them, and we bulleted out some of the things that we need to mention, and particularly around the importance of effective storm management in terms of protection of Bilston Creek, Metchosin Creek, and ultimately Reed's Lagoon. So. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say finish, and then I've got
Okay,
some questions
great.
and comments, please.
And finally, question 7 was a mix of questions and sort of speculative in a way. Is there an opportunity to avoid having the detention ponds in the bufferland? If not, what are the broader benefits that we could see? And again, could this be developed as a combined wetland and stormwater retention facility? And I'll just read the answer here. So district officials have connected with the developers and their consultants. The developer is very aware of Metchosin's preference not to have the detention ponds in the bufferland. If at all possible, the developer has requested its consultant team relocate the detention ponds to within its boundary. The developers are very aware of Metchosin's preference for a stormwater system which will incorporate natural biological processes that can support the overall health of the water and ultimately the we have just been talking about. So I want to pass on thanks to Mr. Smurfett for some of the questions that went into that document. I think we answered the top kind of level ones. Gary had put forward a number of questions. We probably didn't get them all, but in terms of time and legal resources, I think this is probably what we can do for right now. So committee, any further questions? Or Councillor Collins?
So, Councillor Schuken, you say we now have in our possession in the office the stormwater management plan. Do we have that from Langford now?
So that is with the engineer, or so he told me on Thursday. He had just seen it and was taking his time to review it. He didn't give any indication of his timelines for doing it, but he was very aware of our interest in the referrals to the advisory committees. And that there's a policy that's imminent as well. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Craig. Thank you.
Sure. Maybe I'll just ask, if we send a letter, will that come from council or from the working group or from staff? It seems like it may be a bit of a negotiation, so I'm wondering if it'd be kept at the staff level. I'm just not sure.
That is a good question. I don't think it would come from the working group. And I think that's probably one to take back to Ms. Tarnowski.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting though, because it's both a technical thing, but there's also some politics involved as well, in choosing to prioritize certain things over maybe some other things. But I'll connect with Ms. Tarnowski and talk about that further.
Great. Just thinking of the ability to be nimble in response to what's going on. It may be helpful at the staff level, obviously taking direction from council. My other question was, I like what I'm reading here about the detention pond possibly not being in the buffer land. At the same time, though, let's have our eyes set on the best and most durable solution to protect the creek. In other words, if it's better on our land to do better protection on the creek, I'm good with that, as opposed to forcing it in Langford and then have a lousy result. So let's keep our eye on the ball here in terms of the health of the creek. And just making that suggestion or wish. But the other thing was, do we know about any runoff precautions over the industrial area? Has that come up yet? The other part of the buffer land, the further part up, I guess I'm wondering about. And maybe that's something we should inquire of Langford about at some point here. And if the working group would take that on, or council, either way, but.
I would suggest not the working group right now, because they will have their hands full. It is a great question. And particularly because what I'm to understand is the industrial side will still be using septic systems. What I understand is they will not have municipal services sewage coming up. So that's an interesting twist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that's maybe one to take away and strategize in terms of how to get more information. So.
Yeah, maybe we could bring it back at a future meeting. It's just one not to forget, I guess.
Yeah. Great. Marilyn.
Thank you for this. So I have a number of questions. So this is going to be reviewed by our consultant engineer, who's a civil, as I understand, he's a civil engineer. Does he have the qualifications to examine this and give thorough and comment? I'm not suggesting he doesn't have his engineering degree. I'm just wondering, does he have the qualifications to comment on the stormwater management program or proposal?
Yeah, and I have to say I'm not maybe in the best position to say whether he has or hasn't, but when I talked to him about this, he did harken back to experience he has in this area.
Okay.
So
I think that's something that we'd like to check on and ask him about. And secondly, the developer must obtain the district's consent. So is that the district's consent, or is that the district and council's consent, or is that just the district implying that that would be council as well?
What I understand is that it is the CAO who would give approval.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what do they mean by workmanlike manner? The developer must carry out work in a workmanlike manner.
Yeah.
It's sort of old archaic terminology, and I don't know what that means really.
It must have some legal standing and meaning, but I don't.
Okay.
And probably it means not bad workmanlike manner,
Okay.
not poor workmanlike manner. So, good question.
Okay, and the other thing that I wanted to know about, and I think it's a real shame that we've got this flow monitoring station, but it doesn't monitor for quality. It's just quantity. And I don't know if we have adequate metrics on absolute pre-development flow. And so what are we going to compare this to? So those are some of the concerns that I have. Regarding question 5, the section 223, this is on page 48. I think this is one of our biggest problems, because once the lots are developed, all the rights and all the responsibilities will be turned over, inherent in the sale of those lots. So if something happens, and again, unintended consequences, if the walls fall, or if we get immense flooding there, which we may do in some of the events, we would have to take each individual lot owner to court, as opposed to the city of Langford. And I'd like some kind of clarification regarding that. And then, I had a question about who sends the letter, council or staff. And I like the answers to question 7, but nothing's written down. I would prefer things to be written down in paper rather than phone calls and discussions. Having things written down makes me feel a lot more comfortable.
Okay, great. Ms. Tarnowski.
So I'm just going to add information to question 5, because that was a question that I specifically asked about. So that lies in the servicing agreement that was mentioned here. So the suggestion strongly suggested that we meet with the city of Langford to find out exactly where the servicing agreement is at. If there isn't one yet, it's encouraged that we have one that will see the city of Langford take over ownership and responsibility of the infrastructure post-sale. So that we will be dealing with, Metchosin will be dealing with the City of Langford in terms of maintenance, repairs, or anything like that. So that, like I said, so that license servicing agreement part of question number 5.
Okay, perfect.
So through the chair, Mr. Tarasi, as the legal counsel has advised us, we haven't had those conversations or any exchange of written documentation back and forth regarding the servicing agreement.
That's correct.
Okay, so would you like a resolution from council to have that done, or what would you like from us? I think that would be a good idea. I don't know what my colleagues think, but I think that would be.
I think it'd be a great idea to have a resolution to direct me to do that.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll make that motion that council directs staff to, as per the legal counsel guidelines, to communicate with the Langford's approving officer regarding questions of the servicing agreement to address issues such as indemnity and maintenance of the stormwater works going forward. So both during construction and then after sale of those lots.
Great. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Donaldson, and discussion.
And just within that, I don't think we need to change the motion, but just to say that we request Langford to assume the obligations. I mean, see what their interest is.
And through the chair, if I can just reach out to the Deputy Corporate Officer, Ms. Hanson, did you get the motion? Or did...
I didn't get the complete one, but I'll get it on.
Okay. Did you want me to repeat it?
I have to say I'm good with the motion the way it is.
Okay.
Because I don't know if we know exactly what Langford's obligations are at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it'd be great to make a sort of a non-confrontational. Why don't we just go? I would suggest going with the initial motion, and yeah, we can amp it up if we need to later.
Okay.
So, okay. Good. So, any further comments on the initial motion? Hearing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Great, thank you very much. And I think we're done with this. Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, in the budget we provided some funding for a hydrologist. I just wondered how that person can be involved in this.
Well, one of the ways they could be involved is during the review of the stormwater management plan. I had a glimpse at other plans, and they're quite technical documents. I'm hoping that the policy is passed on Monday that will allow, again, these plans to be referred to me asking PTAS, very much like a subdivision plan would be over a certain threshold. And from there, those groups may come up with some questions and we can refer it. So that would be my idea right away. So. And a working group may have questions, the Bilson Creek group may have questions that we could, so, Marilyn.
And I was also hoping that the Agriculture Advisory Select Committee would also be included with Metchosin Environmental Committee and the Parks and Trails.
Great.
And so the three of them.
Yeah, that is in the new draft of the policy, so great. So. Okay, so I think we can close off that discussion. And I do acknowledge that we've had 2 pinks in terms of correspondence related to Mile Zero. One has come from Mr. Morgan of Mile Zero, and the other has come from Bev Bacon and Kathy Atherton. So, great. And there is no more business with the Community Planning Committee for tonight, so could I have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Councillor Donaldson and seconded by Councillor Rapp. And all in favor? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'll be late.
Mary Little, you asked a question about what you call the flow monitoring device there. It's not a flow monitoring device.
It's a monitoring device.
It just monitors the level of the water in the pond upstream, which if there's crap in the pond, the level will come up. That doesn't mean there's more water coming down. And if someone goes and unplugs the culvert, the water will drop. That doesn't mean there's less water coming down. So that's something that I mentioned in one of my comments earlier, was that you have to, with flow monitoring, you generally have to do it in a situation that is strictly controlled.
Stable, yeah.
So that what you can do is, okay, you apply certain equations. One of them's like, I won't get technical, but that allows you to say the water level's so high, you've got so much water coming out. What's there just tells you how much water's in the pond, high with. If I went down there and dumped in 2 buckets of dirt, the whole thing's down the tube. If a deer fell in there dead, it's down the tube. So the information really doesn't.
It's quite complicated, isn't it? You've got the flow monitoring on Metchosin Creek, then you've got the 2 other flow monitors further
Metchosin,
down.
the one in
But all of
Bilston,
it's quite...
on the one in Bilston that's been there for years, when I was on MEAC, people were saying, oh, it measures this and that, and I said, no. It doesn't. It just tells you how high the water is in that thing.
Yeah.
And somebody has to do the engineering to figure it out, and it's going to change from week to week.
Yeah.
So just...
It's not a great measure, but it's all that we got. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's right.
Like, I mean, whether it's here or somewhere else.
It's not...
It's the technology.
It's what you have.
Well, what happens with that is actually it flows over the road.
Right. Oh, we're really out of luck.
Okay, I think we're ready to go with the Public Works and Protective Services Committee meeting. Is there any additions or amendments to the agenda, which has the addition of a pink? All right, we'll move on to public participation.
I think we have to adopt the agenda amended with the pink.
Okay, I'll take a motion thank you, moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? All right, now public participation.
Gary Smurfett, Gilbert. I'm looking at agenda item 7B, the agreement for the facility use. And it's a pretty comprehensive agreement, and some of the things in it just cause me concern, but I brought it right down to 4.1D as an example of my concerns. And before someone serves food or beverages, I'll give you a chance to get there. It's on page 13 of the package. They're obliged to consult the district to determine specific menu items, service levels, and pricing expectations. And then the district reserves the right to amend menu options and prices. I'm just thinking, do we really want to tell people that they can't serve cabbage rolls, but they can serve pigs in the blanket, and how much we should charge for those things? I think perhaps this agreement is a very detailed one that comes from a large organization, and we really don't want to burden our staff or council deciding things like what should be on the menus when people apply for a permit. Perhaps, you might want to ask for a closer look at it to make it more Metchosin friendly. Thank you very much.
Thanks, so we'll be commenting on that further down.
Sarah Anthony, 4290 Metchosin Road. This isn't something that's on the agenda, it was something that was talked about in the last meeting. I was just thinking a bit about raising the speed limit issue, lowering the speed limit, I should say. I don't think we would raise the speed limit. But I guess was kind of bugging me about it was thinking about who that would affect the most, and I think that would really be especially working people and especially working people with kids who have to kind of get from one place to another. I mean, of course, speeding is definitely a big issue in Metchosin. Like, we live on Metchosin Road, and that doesn't make any sense on public record. Sorry, my sound effects. But it is crazy. I mean, we have the sign right outside our place that the 40 sign, and I hope it helps a little bit because it is crazy, and we do have some people who just drive nuts out here. But I think like the speed limit, I believe, is 50, and in outside of the downtown core. And I think for people getting into town, like that is like going any lower than that would be really hard on people who have to be somewhere. I mean, you know, like me and Eric are lucky we work from home, but not everybody has that. And a lot of people do have to get somewhere, and it can be really hard to manage in the morning. So it's just something to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa B., Kangaroo Road. I actually don't know which committee is appropriate to address. Is it appropriate to talk about the Beckingham Road at this committee?
That would have been the planning.
Would it have? Okay. I was afraid I missed my opportunity. I thought that was not the right one. So, okay, that's fine.
But I think we, what do you think, Council? Could we go ahead with this one? Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just take 1 minute of your time, which is I'd like to reiterate again my support for the idea of piped water at the Beckingham Road. There's very, very strong encouragement for that, and also to continue to encourage the council to approve no more than 20 lots. I think it's already a great benefit to the developer to have 20 lots. It's been pointed out to me that at 100 acres, if they were taking the 5 lot or the 5 acre option, they wouldn't have gotten 20 lots anyways, because you have to have roadways and this and that. So 20 lots is already, in fact, a benefit to them by going to the 2 acre lot proposition. So I would hope that you would keep it at 20 lots and maintain at least a little bit of our rural feeling here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric White, 4290 Metchosin Road. I'd just like to add to what Sarah said. Unfortunately, speed limits only affect poor people, because if you're a CEO making $600 an hour, well, you going through a speed or a school zone, you know, it's, if you save a minute a day at $600 an hour, it's going to take you a lot of speeding tickets before your time saved is going to make up the money spent. And on the inverse, when you slow people down getting from their in-town job to, say, the far end of Kangaroo Road, what you're doing is you're taking away their family time. You're taking away the precious hours that they have by saying you need to drive slower, and we don't mind that you're losing those minutes to spend with your kids.
Thank you. Right, anyone else for public participation? Right, we'll move on then. I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the meeting from April 17th.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Schuken, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Okay. Right, Councillor's update. In April, Councillor Gray and I spent 2 very informative hours learning the workings of the incident command system on the occasion of an oil spill response exercise organized by the Western Canada Marine Response Corporation. So anyway, it was quite amazing actually. It's the exercise is extremely complex. People may have noticed all the boats out in the water off Royal Roads, because it was quite a mind-boggling experience, really. They seem to deal with pretty much every aspect possible of responding to a spill in our waters. So I know Councillor Gray is going to have more on this at another occasion. Anyway, it was really worthwhile. And last week, Chief Dunlop coordinated a regular stakeholders meeting to discuss readiness for emergency situations such as heat domes and wildfires. And that meeting provided a really great opportunity to meet people from all facets of the community. It's a very interesting meeting, getting input from all over. I mean, Petter Bay and Pearson College and Wild Ark and community groups, and it was just it was really interesting. And as far as the fire department, residents are encouraged to call to book a brief home visit for a pre-fire plan. The plan will provide information on access to properties in case of emergencies. The maps will be on a computer in the fire trucks and show responders any difficulty in responding to a call, such as a steep, winding driveway. So, it's a really good safety option. It doesn't take long at all, and the firefighters, whoever comes, won't be in the house. They'll just have a look at your property and access to your home and outbuildings. A couple of dates to note as far as the Metchosin Senior Association and the Resource Center. May 17th, nurse practitioner Jeanette McMillan is going to talk about vaccines appropriate for seniors. May 18th, there's a presentation on spring birds with Anne Nightingale. And June 3rd is the annual Parisian Cafe. So there's more information on that on their website or by calling the Seniors Resource Center. All right, that's my agenda here. So now I'll move on to the Metchosin School Facility Use Policy and Agreement. Now this is, as Mr. Smurfit mentioned, is just really a starting point. There's so many groups of people interested and very excited about booking the gym. So these documents will provide a starting point. We'll take the comments from council on it and the input from community members, and which are certainly be welcome, and revise it as needed. We just needed a basis to start with, and then we'll fine tune it and make it more Metchosin friendly, which it needs. I don't really think we need to start telling them what kind of food they can serve either. So, and the CAO and I will get together and go over it and bring it back. Some of the points I had were on page 7, sustaining users. I think that really needs to include community groups, as there's music group, such as music groups or theater groups. They might request regular times and not just sports groups. The single users should also include community groups. On page 8. Definitions for sustaining and single users, again, should also include other community groups. Sports. On page 9, it seems like the facility use agreement should really be specific that it's for commercial renters. And there's just various ones. So, and there's an area under license to use. It says January 21st to February 3rd, so obviously that is just from an old agreement. I think the agreement needs to be simplified a lot for smaller gatherings, and possibly we can check with the agreements used by the community house and the community hall. Parking throughout the documents, it talks about a charge for parking in various locations, but I really can't quite see how that's going to be managed. Like, so I'm going to stand out there and count cars or keep other people out, or how that would work for that. On page 17, it talks about being affected by a strike or lockout of West Shore Parks and Recreation staff, so you probably don't need that one. And on the same page, 10.2 said the licensee will provide all sound equipment, but in the facility we do have sound equipment, which is available for rent. On page 21. Just charging people to use a few chairs and tables for a meeting seems excessive. Choir practice, for example, would wind up being quite expensive if they had to pay for chairs for the group. But in general, I think non-profit groups deserve more of a break. Most of them include volunteers who already put a lot of hours in to support the community. And for casual users, possible to just have a waiver agreement for the insurance. Because again, if you just want to have a drop-in game of basketball, the the whole insurance makes that very prohibitive. So I'd like to get some comments from council on what you guys think. Okay, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually read this a couple different times. Each time I came up with new things, and I appreciate that it actually has draft written right through it, because it is quite an extensive document, and I know the root of it and some of the input that people have had already to get to where it is, so I do appreciate the time and energy that went into that. You've already mentioned a couple of things that I had thought about as well, so I won't repeat them. But there's well, we'll just start with on page section 3, obligations of the licensee, 3.1. The licensee must pay all salaries, wages, fees, and commission of all personnel employed by it. My only question is there, will we have a fee structure of who those salaries are? Like it would be whatever department we have, whether it's people that mow the fields or have to remediate those if we're renting out the field, or if it's renting out the gymnasium, cleaning up in the parking lot, those kinds of things. So just wondering how that might work in the future. I don't expect an answer today. These are just things I'm thinking about. 3.12, the licensee shall comply with all federal, provincial, municipal laws, etc. And when I was reading this, it was after reading Councillor Shukin's agenda, where we had talked about mile zero. So the first thing that came to mind was alcohol, but that's addressed a little bit later in this document. But the other thing that I would like us to consider is with that other bylaws and lawful requirements is a no smoking in the building, and if we provide anything on the outside of the building. That seems to be a commonplace in the CRD now with smoking regulations that came in the early 90s. And have changed a little bit over time. I certainly did notice the specific menu thing from the food and beverage, and knowing where this document originated, I do understand that there are commercial kitchens in that facility, so these are just little things that just need to get edited. 4.2 on page 14, liquor sales complies with the district's alcohol use policy. So we heard in the last committee meeting that we don't have an alcohol use policy, so I need clarification of do we or don't we, and if we don't, then obviously we need to see that or design one. And then there's just some other typographical ones. Page 15, ticket passes 6.2, this, assuming this is performances of some sort, who is going to manage that is more my question. So a future delegation to an employee. On page 16, section 9.2, in the opinion of the code team, a threat of arson, bombing, or other violence. I'm assuming code team is something that the fire chief would be able to explain to us, or the interim CAO. I've not heard the term. I think I understand what the term is, but a definition of that, I've not heard of it used in Metchosin. Did notice on page 17 about West Shore Parks and Recreation, which is part of where this document, I'm certain, originated. And then fast forward to page 21 about the facility rates. I have great appreciation for the fact that there is a 2-tier, recognizing commercial and non-commercial. Going down to where there's some more logistics that probably need to be worked out with this. But looking at the bottom portion, I'm just wondering if maybe some of those costs are a little bit too low. My main concern is we actually cover our costs, because they're still going to have heat, light, and general maintenance, washrooms to clean, that sort of stuff. So I understand, giving a break to residents that use it all the time and stuff, but right now, the residents or the taxpayers of the community are actually subsidizing the cost of this building. So we do need to cover our costs, so I think we need to consider what the costs really are to maintain this facility. What else we got here? Yeah, so I made a note to myself, the janitorial, the cleaning of the building, the lights, the heat, that sort of stuff. And then on page 23, where it says equipment required, in one of the pinks from Ms. Voigt, she has some very good ideas in here and some thought-provoking mechanisms as what we could probably put into this document. Suggests a locker maybe for some of the users that would be there often, whether it's a badminton or whatever, pickleball, floor hockey, that sort of thing, and do have a space for them to be able to lock this up. So those are things that we would need to think about. The line item underneath the equipment required where it says school field parking lot, I guess my question is, we've talked about the school field being used as a parking lot, and in the drier weather at least, I'm not talking about turning it into a parking lot. So would that be the space that be rented, or would it be the school parking lot, the asphalt out front of it, the tarmac that's already existing there? So roadside of the chain link. So just trying to figure out which side of that fence are we actually talking. So maybe it's grass field, tarmac, I don't know. Those are just a couple of things that I came up with. And so otherwise, I think there's a great deal of work has been done, and starting to fine tune it. So I do appreciate the time and energy that staff and I know Councillor Epp has had some input on it, and a few others. So thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Councillor Gray?
I can jump in. Again, thanks to the work by staff. It's a large package, lots of moving parts, and also for the Carol Voigt's correspondence. So I just wanted to focus my comments on the purpose and the allocation of the guiding principles. The contract should follow that. So, and I'm thinking about the management and operations plan for the old school that we're planning to work on that may inform this going down the line. But with respect to the district administration, I get the idea that we need rental rates for the fields and the parking lots, but I would recommend that rate structure be held separately from the rental agreements at the school for the gym. In other words, when we hear about the fields being rented, that's really event parking, like Metchosin Day, the special event with the Bruce Summers car event, and maybe Maker's Market, that sort of thing. But I think those issues should come to council. But there needs to be a rate structure that is approved for the district to work with on that, so we know what we're doing. But I would remove it from rental because I don't see it as being part of the rental agreements. When I look at the document now, and no criticism of it, but we could hand this over to, I guess it's Instinct Training who's managing things now, and quite legitimately he could rent out the entire year to commercial users with little opportunity for community groups. So I think we need to, lay out in our principles what's the object of the school here. What are we doing? So my purpose would be to maximize community use of the facility that it owns. So it's largely what we want to do is have the school used by people in the community. My view would be it's a facility. It's the use of facility that's important, not making money. And I'm with Councillor Donaldson, at least to cover costs, but we don't have any other purpose really in making money. That could mean that it's empty at times, not rented, which would be fine. So I'm interested in things like promoting community social activities, lectures, theater, music, community sports, physical activity, and health, organized leagues, practices, pickup games, that kind of thing in terms of our principles and what we want to do, have the room available for. A community shelter in the event of an emergency, although it's not earthquake resilient, we know that. And then there's been some mention of weddings and funerals and that sort of thing. But then you get into different rules about damage and cleanup and hours. And it can be difficult if you don't know who the renters are. That can put you in an awkward position because, of course, unlike other facilities, we won't have a caretaker there to keep an eye on things or help out in the event of a problem. So then in terms of the actual principles, I'm thinking about community first, listing the community groups perhaps. We have them listed on our website in different places. Like who are the bona fide community groups. Unknown renters, well, that's a little bit different, and we'll have to just sort of sort out if somebody just puts a name and says they'd like to rent, what do we do about that? A clear rate structure, operating hours is a daily rate from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. What about multi-day rentals or weekend rentals with specified hours? I'm thinking that we don't want to promote alcohol at events particularly, so I'd take it out of the standard contract. But obviously when people want alcohol there, then they need to get a special event permit. It needs to be approved by the district, so we have a handle on that. And perhaps that would be a clause that would go in when people have a special event permit. I think we need to finalize our district alcohol policy, including the hours and users and that sort of thing. I'm not that interested in commercial users being permitted to have alcohol use. We don't really need a party zone in downtown Metchosin. And then reducing the liability for the district, clear processes, regular and documented maintenance, co-insured on any liability insurance. And then on specific days like New Year's and Halloween, those particular days, we need to know who the renters are. I don't suggest we just accept a renter who phones and asks to rent on those particular days. There's mention of merchandise sales with profits retained by renters. If that's happening, then non-profit or not, they should probably be paying commercial rental rates. Storage space for sports equipment comes up in Carol Voigt's letter. Promoting recycling comes up in the document. I think that's a good idea. Those are just a few thoughts. Oh, one other, just a point that we need to decide on at some point, are we allowing high heels in the gym? So I know from experience in other rental halls, Metchosin Hall, but other ones I've been involved in redoing floors. Once the high heel come in, then the floor it changes dramatically. So that's just a choice we make. It's neither here nor there, just whatever people want to do, but it will change the floor remarkably. And I had a question for Councillor Epp about basketball hoops. Are they on the way? Are they coming? They probably are. I don't know. Maybe they're up.
No, that type of thing isn't included in the grant, so that's something that hopefully we can. My hope that is we can have some fundraising events to add the things like basketball hoops and any other things that we need going down the road.
Great. I'm not so hot at basketball, but I just thought I'd check in. And then the other would be things like floor hockey nets, other sort of equipment that might be standardized. But super. That sounds great. So I see there's some work to do. Just want to offer those comments. They're sort of more general, overarching. There are, of course, the clauses that Councillor Donaldson mentioned and the ones you pointed out as well.
Great. Thank you. Mayor Little?
Yeah, I think this is a great starting point, so I thank the staff for developing the facility allocation and use policy and the facility use agreement. I agree that some of the information here can be deleted because it's not as applicable to Metchosin, and that's easy enough from the comments that have been made. I think it's a really good idea to make this a no smoking on the premises, on all the premises, as keeping in line with other facilities. I agree that it doesn't need to be necessarily a money-making venue, but it could be. If this is for, we've heard a lot that this might be a venue for weddings, but I guess it'll be up to council if it's going to be a wedding venue for people that don't wear high heels. That might be a little bit tricky, so we'll have to figure that out. But that if the rationale for the kitchen has been to provide an emergency shelter, of course, but also if we wanted to rent it out to vendors in terms of a wedding. So we're going to have to be careful what we decide this use is going to be about, because you can't really say you can have a wedding but no high heels, or take your shoes off at the door. I don't know how that'll work, but well, we can try. So I agree with a lot of what has been said regarding the facility rates, but I do believe that we should differentiate between community users and commercial, but I don't think we cannot afford actually to not rent this to commercial. I mean, weddings would be a commercial venture. And it does state, to Councillor Gray's assertions about the facility allocation and what our policy will be, it does state that it recognizes that the intended use of the facility is a community gathering space. And so if you want more verbiage around this being a community-centric, or it does say community gathering space for primarily community members. So I'll be in favor of if you want added information there. But it's a good document. Some of it needs to be revised, but it's a great starting point. So I thank staff for that.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor App. Just 3 brief comments. I'm wondering, like, as you look ahead to the groups who might use this, I'm wondering if this kind of allows for like block booking. So for example, the pickleball players and the like Metchosin Basketball League and Metchosin Floor Hockey League, they probably will want their days like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, noon to whatever. So and they probably want to set that up on a 6-month schedule or whatever. So does this agreement enable that? Don't need to answer that right now, but then even a deeper question is, what is the process for doing that kind of thing? And just considering the gym over the last few months being here, it's really come home to me that we not only own a recreational facility, but a performing arts center as well, and all the things that go along with that, like having potentially a say in who does the performance, as Councillor Gray was saying. And also keeping rates manageable for community use, but also making the building like that, those rates sustaining. I would argue that should be the case. So again, my question is there room for block booking as we go? What's the process for that? So that's one question. Then I just throw these at you. You can. The one thing that I was wondering about in the fee structure is whether we should have something called a septic field surcharge, just to recognize that there's a finite septic kind of resource there, that when people come in, especially performing arts groups where you might have 100 or hundreds in the audience, so that population will, or those people will tax the system on an ongoing basis. So there might be room here to specifically address that. So, yeah.
I think that kind of would be covered though in the increased amount for the commercial renters or events like that. Like that's part of the reason, I would think. I don't know. The CAO wants to make a comment on that. The block. We did talk about it,
okay.
And doing this stuff on a temporary basis, not temporary really, but that we can review it or revise it as we figure out how it's all going to work.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adams. So the driver is what is the framework for the space. So what I've heard to date is it's supposed to be a community center. If that's the vision and that the framework that the committee and council chooses, then that will determine, to Councillor Gray's point, is do we just minimize our commercial rental, therefore putting the space at risk that the community will keep continuing to subsidize the building? Or do we do a balance with, say, primarily we'll make it a community use space. However, if the commercial renters come along and have to bump community group, then do we just say, well, because you can enable the building to break even, that we will take commercial renters at a time. So really what my question to the committee is primarily, what is the vision, what is the framework for the space use? Because that will determine a lot of the other things that come along, primarily with the pricing as well. So just one note on the pricing is that will, I looked at the pricing for the community hall, I looked at the pricing, Councillor Donaldson, you gave me another document, so I did look at all the pricing for those other facilities, but the primary driver is what is it going to take for us to, at the minimum, break even for the space, with a caveat that we do not know what the usage or the revenue stream is going to be. So are we looking at commercial 20 times a year, or 200 days for user groups. So this is all guessing games right now, but just starting point anyways for the rate structure. So just the point, Councillor, up on the block came to my mind as well. Are we saying as a regular user groups, can you book up to 6 months, 4 months? And what happens when, again, the commercial booking comes along? Do we as a district have the right to say you will be bumped for whatever, if that's their regular book blocking? So a lot of questions for you to ponder. It's a very complicated document and many things to ponder in terms of, because we want to make that space to be able to accommodate so many different and varied uses.
What do you think? Councillor Donaldson?
I like the idea of it being combined. I know that when I participate in things at the community hall, some of the ongoing ones, we do get bumped sometimes because there's a commercial event that comes in, or a wedding, or a reunion, or whatever, and I think that's okay, give enough notice to do that. I don't think it happens so frequently that it would put out any of our community groups of not playing badminton or whatever sport or that sort of thing. I know we have a great big garage door that's been left in the building, which I'm really thrilled about, because if we ever had some kind of a conference there, a mini conference where they're bringing in certain things, I don't know if it's paddle boards or wind sails or whatever, but to have that accessibility to be able to bring some things in, that was an asset I'm glad that we kept. There's lots of interest, from what I understand, to be able to use that gymnasium from commercial entities, whether it's used partially as training for different things, I already said conferences, there could be CD Saturdays there. What I don't want is for us to compete with our other business community, but be on par, like complement everything that's going on in the village, whether it's the community hall, the community house, the fields, the different sports, the different kinds of training, the businesses that are here. I think it could be, it's an asset for the vibrancy of the core, and there's been a lot of time and energy and thought already put into the gymnasium and revitalizing it, so I think that's great. One of the things I didn't mention earlier, but I know from looking at other facilities and their contracts, kitchens can be rented out as well, so it could be a fee structure for that. If it's with weddings, you need like a warming place or refrigeration set up, usually a staging area, that sort of thing. The fact that we're actually going to be putting a commercial kitchen in, this is a little bit aside from this, but there might be an opportunity that a local catering business in Metchosin might want to.
Just to interrupt, it's not going to be a commercial kitchen.
Oh, that's changed.
No, it's never been going to be a commercial kitchen. It's going to be a place where you can have food preparation and warming, but it won't be a full scale. That's not in the budget. Like, it's just way too expensive. So we're going to have the capability that it may eventually be able to be, enhanced.
So I think for clarity is that commercial kitchen, the class 3, it's not a class 3 kitchen, so which means there's no deep fryers. So it is still classified as commercial, but class 2, so there'll be no deep fryers.
Exactly. Yeah. So it still could be used, yeah. There's a lot of kitchens that don't have deep fryers, but you still have proper venting, stainless steel, that sort of stuff. There's still a lot of kitchens that you can have and use for facilities like that. I don't have to have stainless steel and stuff, and they're still considered commercial.
All right, well, that'd be good then.
Yeah. So that's another option.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, thanks for that. What if we're talking about what is our vision? I think that deserves a whole other conversation, and not for tonight. I think that would be a good conversation for us to have. I'm also in favor of not competing with the businesses here for the whole site. I don't think that's fair, and I think the rates should be manageable. Except for I'm not in favor of waiving the insurance. I think insurance is very important for all the groups to have, because if they don't have insurance, then the liability is on us, and I think insurance is always a really important point. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councillor Gray?
Well, I was thinking too about the issue of commercial letting, and there's different ways to control it. I get the point that maximum income is good, but if we want to give priority, it's really, we run into trouble, I think, with the how did you phrase it, Councillor Shukin? Block bookings, those block bookings. And so I can just reflect. It's not really material to this, except to explain the way the Metchosin Hall works. Is you can get bumped for a district business, an election, or a funeral coming from Beecher Bay. The other bumping that happens is on Fridays, because Fridays people want to get married on a weekend typically, and so we let them come in on the Friday to decorate, get all ready. So then that means that the renters can choose not to be there on Friday, as a regular day, not to be on the day they could possibly be bumped. That would be the most common one, I think. At any rate, maybe one way of dealing with the commercial letting, and I'm not sure of this, but just throwing it out as an idea to ponder, is say, well, we limit it to 25% per week, or 25% per month, or 25% per year, whatever it is. The difficulty is that when I read through it, I thought, oh yeah, someone could do like a conference, and that might be 3 days. Oh shoot, that's going to bump up against the block booking. So we were in that little problem there. But if we controlled it some way, like a percentage, obviously 25% per week is different than per month. You end up having a place or a means of supporting both block bookings and commercial renting if they go beyond. But I am aware, and I take Mayor Little's point that there's more to talk about here. We're just sort of whetting our appetite. But I do want to recognize the pressure that MIN's under here to get some kind of short-term rudimentary rental contracts out so we can get some sports things started. And people would need to sign waivers for liability. And maybe we see where the commercial question goes. If there's rents that are for like multiple days, or if they just have any single-use days, presumably they can fit in without any, without a big hassle on our part. But if it turns out being week-long, then I guess that's where we say, oh, wait a minute, we already have people booked, and we'll have to develop a policy around it.
So we haven't come across that yet.
Yeah.
It's been single day, which is...
That makes it easy.
Anything else? Councillor Schick?
No, sorry, I go back to that thing about the facility sustaining itself, because if it doesn't over time, that's going to lead to trouble. And what that looks like is, so I guess I'm with Councillor Donaldson in looking at a mix, and the challenge is how to do that properly, so, yeah.
Thanks. Well, the thing is, after 6 months or a year, we'll have a lot better idea. And it's not like we can't revise what we're doing. We just need to start.
Yeah, good point.
Mary Lynn?
Yeah, and I was just wondering, has this document been given to the fire chief so she can review it as well?
No, not yet. This is just the first draft for a discussion in the committee.
Okay, so maybe after the second draft, the fire chief in specific can also look at it, because she'll be able to comment on that, and also her group, the firefighters, will also want to use the gymnasium, so I think the comments will be valuable.
Okay, thank you. I think that's probably it for now, and we will bring back a revised document, do some tweaking. So last thing that we have here is the monthly report from the Metchosin Fire Department, the Protective Services report, and thanks to Chief Dunlop for this. It's really comprehensive. I think the highlight, one of the highlights that sure stuck out was that, they must have really wowed it says 987 kids from the Souk School District in grades 4 and 5. They attended the 24th Annual Fire Safety Expo. It's the group, and it was held here in Metchosin. The group rotated between safety talks and demonstrations from Metchosin, Langford, Colwood, and Souk Fire Departments, as well as ICBC, bylaw officers, Department of National Defense, and West Shore RCMP. So that must have been quite something. Well done for putting that all together.
Councillor, it
Yes.
seems like this is a new format. I don't recall seeing this before. I like it, especially the report on the number of incidents and whatnot, so.
Yeah, it's really great, and there's definitely a very busy department. Lots going on all the time. And we have correspondence, has been mentioned, from Carol Voigt, and we will take that into consideration when we're looking at the new revised agreement. Other than that, I think I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Thank you. Adjourned.
That is, yeah, I mean, it's as agreements go, there's one of the agreements, and yeah, but it's kind of a bit of a beast to grab a hold of.
What is it?
Can I please touch for a second?
Yes, that's fine for commercial. Nobody used to stuff.
Yeah.
It's gotta be, gotta have two different types of things.
Yes.
Just some.
Yeah.
But it's getting there.
Yeah, for sure. And just as you say, we have to almost embark on something and really speak out.
It's just,
So,
that's the whole thing with the school, right? It's just kind of figuring it all out as we go. Trial and error, basically.
yeah. Okay.
Ms. Hanson, are we good to go? Great. So let's call to order the Environment and Natural Areas Standing Committee for Monday, May 8th. It's about 9:25 p.m. And I just wanted to recognize that we're meeting tonight on the territories of the Coast Salish people, including our near neighbors, the Shannon Nation. So we've got the agenda before us. So any changes to the agenda? We're happy with that? Okay, so we'll proceed. No presentations tonight. Any public participation? We're all talked out. Great, well, thank you. So we've got a few minutes to look at. First of all, adoption of the minutes of the Environment and Natural Areas Committee of April 17th.
Move adoption.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Epp.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Shukin. Any discussion?
Councillor Gray, hold on. Nope, sorry, next one. I'll have a question. Thank you.
Okay, super. Maybe I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. So the next one is the minutes of the Special Environment and Natural Areas Committee workshop of April 25th. I have a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Epp. And Councillor Shukin?
Yeah, could you refresh us as to what the next steps are with the climate action plan and what timelines and all that?
I'll need to dig here a little bit to get the timelines, but I believe, oh, there we are. Right at the, thank you. At the very end, we can see. So, Mr. Roddick from Pinna Sustainability, he took notes and details from our meeting at council, and then subsequently we sent him two sets of minutes, official minutes, and then a record of what people had said at the meeting in the evening of the MIASC meeting, and those have both been sent to him. And there may have been one other piece of correspondence I forwarded subsequently that had come in. At any rate, so now Pinna Sustainability have the materials, and he's intending to come back and meet with us. I think our meeting is June 8th, although I'm not sure, of the Environment and Natural Areas Committee, where he'll bring a draft plan. We'll get a look at that then, provide some feedback, carry that forward to council later in June. It may need to come back to the Environment Committee, depending on what kind of changes we want to see before we bring it to council, or whatever we might decide at that time. So I'm hoping getting to July we'll have completed the plan. The plan, of course, will have a series of actions, and then we'll get talking about those.
Great. Well, I thought it was a good session that afternoon, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so maybe I'll call the question on these adoption of these minutes. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So the next is simply receipt of the minutes of the Metchosin Environment Advisory Select Committee meeting of April 25th, 2023. And there you see some of the input on the climate plan ideas.
Move receipt.
Thank you, Councillor Shukin, and second, Councillor Donaldson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda was simply a councillor's update, and I've got a few points here to raise. And one was, Colin Sparks joined us on the council night, but I thought, what the heck, we should congratulate him again from the Environment Committee, because we have the name Environment Committee and meant to deal with those issues. Well, it was the Citizens Environment Network in Colwood who presented Colin Sparks with the 2023 Environment Stewardship Award for his leadership and commitment to climate action and environmental sustainability. So Colin has been going to Royal Bay Secondary School, working on environmental projects, and formation of he was a student lead of a sustainable community council and led the creation of an environmentally themed mural on school premises. He also presented to Colwood Council constructive ideas for transportation, and he presented here, I think it was last week, on constructive ideas about housing in relation to climate. So he's an active young person in our community considering climate and the environmental issues, and that's great. He's been asked to sit on the Colwood City Advisory Committee for Active Transportation, and well, just wanted to recognize his achievements again tonight. Councillor Happ.
When I spoke to Colin after the last meeting, he said that he is graduating this year, so once he gets through grade 12, he's going to come to council and give us a couple of the presentations that he made to the Colwood Council.
Terrific. I look forward to that. Mayor Little.
Yeah, so I attended the event that was hosted by Scenic, and we had our picture done with Mayor Kobayashi and myself and Colin. They did present him with a Gary Oak tree to start the Gary Oak Meadow, and of course there were questions that perhaps Colin's grandchildren would be able to see the Gary Oak Meadow because Gary Oaks grow so slow. But anyways, they did present him with this tree and a plaque certificate for this, and it was a really nice event, and that's why at the last council meeting, since he was here, I took that opportunity to commend him for that, and certainly we can do it again. If you'd like to send him a letter, we could send him a letter from this committee congratulating him. I'm not opposed for that. So it would be a letter from the Environment and Natural Areas Committee, a letter of congratulations.
Great idea. People are open to that?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Sukin, seconded by Mayor Little. Great, we'll prepare that letter. All in favor? Super duper. Thanks for that, reminding us about that event. That's lovely. So I wanted to let people know that MIASC, Rick Braun has stepped away from being chair of MIASC. He and his wife Nicole are away for an extended period, and so Gary Fletcher stepped up to the chair position starting on May 1st. We talked already about the MIASC meeting, where we got some pretty good feedback on to provide into the climate action plan. And I wanted to let everyone know that we're going to tackle the invasive black knapweed at Tower Point again. And the CRD folks, Jenny Eastman is the person in charge at the CRD. She's got a team that are involved in dealing with invasive species across the CRD. And it'll be a little bit later this month. CRD will be at Tower Point, and they've got quite a bit of black knapweed in the big field there, and they'll be treating that with a pesticide, with an approved pesticide application person, and then we're hoping to go from there to the neighborhood around Tower Point, where there's I wouldn't say quite a bit of knapweed, but it's sort of spot located. There's like individual plants that have been located by the CRD and previously by Ken Farquharson and Annie McKinnon, who walked that area. Ken particularly walked around and they mapped it all. And I think this will be the second year of treatment of black knapweed on those properties, and where we will turn up to sort of guide and the pesticide applicator is into the Metchosin right-of-ways and ditches. And then we're hoping then to also provide a letter to the local residents to let them know about black knapweed, and if they have it on their properties, to remove it, and the particulars about removing it, and how to deal with the this particular invasive. The hope is that we'll actually eradicate it from the site, but it probably will be another year at that anyways. There's also, in the same area, there's 2 Japanese knotweed plants that have been treated in the past in the same procedure, and they'll be treated again this year, is my understanding. So that's just something to let people know about. Black knapweed is a terrible problem in terms of how destructive it is on the landscape. Mayor Little.
You might want to ask staff to put something on our website to notify residents. I think that would be a good idea. And somebody else might want to put that on that, take that and put a link to Facebook on the Metchosin sites. I think it's more than 1 year actually. I think it was either 3 or 4 years. 3 anyways.
It may be, yes. I think the knotweed was treated last year, but the others I'm not sure about. One of them looks like it's completely dead, but we're still looking at it to see. Councillor
Just
Donaldson.
have a question. I don't know a lot about knapweed other than I hear it's horrific and hard to get rid of. So the pesticide they're using, does knapweed grow in an area that people and their dogs would be traversing through? Because Tower Point's very popular for dog walkers.
Yeah. I didn't ask that question about either the chemical nor the what they do, but it's a sort of a work crew event, so it may well be taped off. I don't know. The pesticide that I am, or the herbicide that I'm familiar with for knapweed is picloram, but I'm not sure they're using that here. It's used by BC Hydro all around the province. But I don't know the particular product here. It might be glyphosate, but I can't recall. We did talk about it, but I'm not sure.
I think.
Do you know?
Yeah, I can't remember what the specific pesticide was, but I remember extensive conversations when this came up a few years ago, and that the CRD was using the only pesticide that they could use because it is such an invasive plant and it really does take over. And so they had already gone through the quality control and they picked the pesticide that was the least harmful to other species and more directly affecting the black knapweed. But they also put signs up in the area at Tower Point where everybody is there with their dog. Yeah.
Yeah, and I recall that it's a pesticide that degrades. So unlike picloram, which stays around forever, as far as we know, this one is meant to disappear as it kills the weeds. But I'll find out about that. I'll ask about pests and I'll confirm about signs. That's great input. Thank you. The other thing is that I haven't listed it here, but I've following on our conversation at our last meeting, Councillor Donaldson, I've spoken to Fire Chief Dunlop and her staff in the Fire Smart Department, and we're hoping to get a broom bash going in the near future. I also was in touch with Kathy Atherton about the Tansy Wagner, and that comes a little bit later in the season. But we'll see what we can do about broom. The idea is simply to put a notice out, see if some areas, if people are interested, and if they are, if people do tear it out, then we would have the help of the fire department to pick it up and dispose of it properly. It'll be a small project to start. But
One quick observation. There was a bunch of broom picking that was done on LeBon Road, which the fire department came and helped us eliminate. And those piles were burned so thoroughly and so quickly. It was amazing. Like nothing left, and they must put them up as they are trained to do. So, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. It's kind of what kind of take up we get. We'll say we'll be successful if we let people know about it, and if we get out and do it a little bit, that's great, and we'll try and build it back. It was back in Councillor Morley's time that it all began. It hasn't been done for a few years. The other thing I wanted to mention, we had, I had in the previous MEAS meeting, we had when we looked at the minutes, we let you know about some work that we were doing. Fire Chief Dunlop had become interested in the question of spill response on the shoreline. So the West Coast Marine Response Group are out in the ocean dealing with the spill, and they have the ships and the skimmers and all that to take care of it. But the worry is there's a golden hour, as the oil or the product comes to shore. I believe the West Coast Marine Response will have a response, but it doesn't get here for some time. So there was a discussion that we had with some folks from the Shannon Ocean Center, and it turns out there were two areas that we were interested in working with them, and we're sort of carrying on in terms of the question of the sensitive parts along the shoreline. You'll recall that we're going to meet, a few people from MEASC are going to meet with Michael Lowry of the West Coast Marine Response Center, and we found out that, the Ocean Center people from Shannon Nation are also meeting to talk about the same question. And the traditional territory is, of course, the same shoreline. So we thought, oh gosh, let's get together with them. They're a little bit further ahead in some of their identification of sites and see what they've got. And perhaps we can meet WCMRC together. The second point, though, was that this idea of us joining together with Shannon Nation in terms of this, if you will, quick response, the early response. And we'll learn more from WCMRC about how much a response they provide on the shoreline. But we're hoping that Mayor and Council might agree that we, be in touch with the Beecher Bay Chief and Council and get an agreement that we could work together, that we should work jointly together on that. And if that would meet the committee's approval, I would ask for a recommendation or motion to that effect. That Mayor and Council reach out to Beecher Bay Chief and Council to reach an agreement on jointly developing a shoreline spill response plan.
Well, I can make that motion. So be it.
Thank you. And a second?
So that, just for clarification, that was that Mayor and Council would reach out to the Mutual Council at Shannon First Nations to have initial discussions regarding a shoreline management plan in the case of a spill response.
Yes. And how big a job that will be is not entirely clear. We need to get better notion of what's WCMRC itself doing and what are we doing in the meantime. And then if they arrive on shore, what are we to do? It's kind of getting the idea that we're here first, we already live here, so what can we do in that vein? So,
I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that item? That sounds okay? Yeah.
I just think that the fire chief, has already been involved, as you mentioned, so she should probably be included in that motion, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, in fact,
Consulted first and then.
That would be perfect. And then MEASC was recommending that if, in fact, Council would like to do this, then that Stephanie Dunlop, fire chief, with the support of MEASC, be the Metchosin lead.
Yeah, so maybe change that motion around to consultation with the fire chief to begin with, and then with her, not with her approval, but with her comments and suggestions, then reach out to Shannon First Nations. Good point. Great.
That's what she's been involved in to this point, and their idea was that she would lead, and so that fits perfectly. If everybody's happy with that, okay. I think we are. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thanks. We'll call that carried. Thank you so much. There's so much to learn about this spill response. Each time I get together with somebody, we will learn a little bit more. But it will be a real pleasure to work with Shannon Nation folks on this because of our shared interests and also just getting to know people there. So the final point that I had to raise today was whether or not Council would be interested in endorsing a resolution to go to UBCM about supporting biodiversity in local communities. So protecting biodiversity and enhancing biodiversity is important, I already know, to this Council, Mayor and Council. And in our strategic plan, we've got a couple items, to bolster that. The idea here is to lift the profile to the provincial level and ask that specific funding be established to assist municipalities you know, as we work on this kind of thing, one of the, you know, the kind of activities that can be undertaken, for example, is protecting land, and sometimes that costs money. Buying land costs money, those sorts of things. And we think the province may be interested in this idea. So this came to me via Jackie Larkin, who's a local resident, and she was asking if we might be interested in it. And I said, well, where does it come from exactly? And she said, this is early work of Sierra Club BC. They're talking to different municipalities to find out how interested they might be. And I thought, well, what the heck? I'd ask folks here whether they would like to pursue this or not.
I see absolutely no reason to not support this, and I find the idea of a local natural areas protection fund quite intriguing. So, yeah.
Thank you. Mayor Little.
Yeah, so I just wanted clarification on this. It's good to know where, I was wondering where this originated from. But are we endorsing the resolution, or are we putting forward our own resolution to UBCM? So I'm not sure whether Sierra Club is a member of the Union of BC Municipalities and whether they would be able to put forward a resolution. So I think it would be the municipalities, the districts that would put forward the resolution, and then at the meeting we would endorse others. So that's the first comment. And the only thing that gave me pause for thought is that I'm just wondering what the province is going to do with this. Is it actionable enough? Are we asking? Are they going to receive this like a motherhood statement? I'm wondering if it can be reworded, and I'd be interested to see what the Sierra Club had put forward, maybe reworded that there's actual asks here. So it is.
It's tight.
Yeah, so it doesn't really, it says we're asking the province to work with local governments and First Nations. It's not defined in such a way that there's a takeaway point for the province. In saying that, maybe you want to have it loose. I don't know. What we learned from the AVICC is that the more information there is, the more that people can vote against and try and partition out and split the motion. So, and I'm wondering if it's worth it in here in upfront to define what we mean by biodiversity. I mean, are we talking about a variety of life in the world in terms of a particular habitat or ecosystem? Are we talking about a variety of living species being bacteria, fungi, microorganisms, plants and animals in the natural world? Whose definition are we going to use? The WHO definition, the common definition? And is this a meaning that biodiversity is looking at the variance and the variety of life on Earth, including all those species that I just mentioned? Then the other comment that I have, where does it come from? That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, those are good questions. So I think what I'm talking about is us, carrying the resolution forward, and others would join us, and or others will adopt this. So there'll be a number of districts that would go forward together, and we'll learn about that as the date gets closer. In terms of, so I'm just thinking now, we bring it to council. So how about if between now and, if people are open to it, between now and council, I'll add another bit more detail here in terms of what you're talking about, the definition of biodiversity. I'll find out about if we have, I believe at the moment there are no other districts have gone, but they may have by council meeting. So I'll check about that in terms of supporting a resolution from another group versus leading. And then the third point was, so a bit more detail about the actions, as you say, the actions that would take place. Please.
And then I believe you're going to have to do that lickety split because the deadline for UBCM I think is June 8th.
Yeah.
for final resolutions. So, but it doesn't hurt to have other resolutions at the convention on the same
Yeah.
theme.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I mean, that's actually a good way of doing it, because if one resolution doesn't pass because someone doesn't like a particular word or doesn't like paying attention to fungi, for instance, then the other resolution will pass. So it doesn't hurt to have multiple resolutions on the same topic, and that's what we've seen for years, like with the old growth. There were multiple resolutions on the same, and that shows that there's broader interest in municipalities and district bringing forth solutions to the province.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, well, how about if we, could I take a motion that the Environment Committee recommends Council consider an amended resolution as follows, or how should we do that?
To be crafted and smoothed out in the next week and bring it forward to Council. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Do you want that motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so moved.
Great. Thanks.
So do you want to repeat it for
so what it would be, the Environment Committee recommends Council consider an amended resolution for the 2023 Union of BC Municipalities Convention, taking into account the comments made this evening, and as follows. And then the resolution is there.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay. Did you?
No.
Did someone move the motion?
I moved it.
Okay, moved it. Councillor Shugan, okay then?
Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Shugan moved the motion, and Mayor Little seconded the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried, thanks so much. I think that concludes the agenda that we have before us this evening. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor F, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Thanks so much. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.